It'd be a great question for her, since her budget people are actually in the middle of writing a budget to a $3.2 billion budget deficit. She has 300 budget analysts and lawyers working for her doing that. I don't have any. But I'll give you a few ideas on things that can be done. You have, well, first off, I mean, she's doubled the expense for the governor's budget office. I think you need to lead by example. Double, and increase the size of her personal PR by 343%. First thing I'll do is reduce the size of the governor's entourage. Step one, because you have to lead by example. When I wrote the budget in 2003, that's exactly what we did. I increased the funding for education, but I also reduced the funding for the state senate, and so it went down. She's increased her budget size, her budget office, and her governor's office by 3 times what she increased education in the spending. So that's step one. I've said that I'm going to replace the WASL with a standardized test. That's tens of millions of dollars right there in cost for administering the WASL. That's another one right there. I mean, just sitting here, there's a number of things that you can think of that are just odds and ends. How this worked before is just thousands of decisions just like that, stacked end on end. And what I did is I applied the business principles to what I was doing. I told the state employees that, okay, we're not going to go to training conferences and retreats at the Skamania Lodge for 2 years. So of course I was a bad guy. And that's millions of dollars. Every one of those sorts of things. And every time I made a decision like that, someone in Olympia would say, well, we've never done it that way before. And I said, yeah, you're right. That's why we're in trouble. The $3.2 billion deficit, it's not a matter of what cuts you're going to make. Let me explain that, because a cut is $1 less than you had in the last budget is a cut. The same is the same, $1 more is an increase. She's blown through the biggest surplus the state has ever known, a $2.1 billion surplus. And according to the nonpartisan Ways and Means staff, if everything goes right in Olympia, how often does that happen? But if everything goes right, she's managed to turn it into a $3.2 billion deficit for the next governor to face. But it's also projected out with 8% revenue growth. That means you had 8% more money to spend, but you outspent it by $3.2 billion. So it's not like you have less money to spend. And you have more money to spend, except the promising people to gain favor during an election cycle and all the other things that have gone on, and recklessly gambling that somehow the economic boom wouldn't flatten out. It hasn't gone in the tank here in this Washington state. It's just flattened out. And that's what's caused the problem. She put together a budget that had a spending growth rate that's 2.5 times the revenue growth rate. How long can you do that in this newspaper? Have a spending growth rate that's 2.5 times. How long can you do it in your own household? It's just reckless. This is what the problem is. So it's going to be a series of decisions, thousands of decisions stacked end on end, but like some of the ones I just gave you. What'll end up happening, I guarantee you, education will get more money. When I was $2.8 billion in the hole, I added $220 million to education. She runs around claiming I cut it $1 billion. I don't know how a $220 million increase is somehow $1 billion cut. Only Olympia can that be true. And that's the Olympia cut that I talk about. An Olympia cut, just for our friends at home here, what that is like when my 7-year-old comes to me and says she wants a $100 a week allowance, and I say, no, honey, I'm going to give you $5 a week, and then she runs around the neighborhood telling everybody I cut her budget by 95%. That's an Olympia cut. You can't lose something you never had. And that's really the case. And so most of this will be reductions and increases that people were fantasized about getting, or maybe were promised to gain favor during an election cycle. That's what we had to do last time, and I did it in a bipartisan fashion by seeking out a philosophic majority versus a partisan majority centered around fiscally conservative ideas. And when I tell people I've done it before, I can do it again. If I hadn't done this before, I'd be terrified. But I've done it before, and I know I can do it again. And I'll give you a bigger scope of this, because I think this really, that's why I like doing this and not debates, because you can actually have a full discussion. I was just a guy from Sammamish, Washington, who happened to be a state senator, who happened to be chairman of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and I had 15 budget analysts and lawyers, nonpartisan staff that worked for me. And with that, I found 12% efficiencies in the state budget, 12%. So let's look at this globally. 12% efficiencies I found in the state budget. Christine Gregoire has created a 9% deficit so far. My transportation plan, that's another 2% of the state budget, so that's 11%. Still less than the 12% I found when I was just a guy from Sammamish. When I'm governor, I will have 300 budget analysts and lawyers working for me in my governor's budget office. I will have appointed all those agency directors, and I'll be actually to look inside those agencies and start turning over rocks that haven't been turned over in 30 years.